Hey guys, welcome back to In the Kitchen with Carly. On today's episode, I just want something super simple to make today. I'm not really in the mood to get into a complicated recipe, so we're gonna do a pizza. I thought that would be fun. I have a lot of ingredients left over in my fridge from this past week that I want to use up. So I'm gonna throw it all together and we'll put it on a pizza. So first we're gonna start with the pizza dough. I did not make this from scratch. I bought this at Publix in the deli area where they have sauce, cheese, a little different homemade doughs. So I picked this one up. It's just a homemade Italian dough at Publix. I'm sure your local grocery store will have one. So we're gonna start by rolling this out. One thing that's super important about the dough that I learned is it needs to be at room temp. It will not roll out nice and flat if it's cold. So definitely this has been sitting out. It's room temperature now. Hopefully we don't have any issues because that is the tough part. The dough, if it's too cold, will retract back and you'll have a really hard time rolling it out. So you wanna make sure you flour your countertop. I'm gonna put our dough right here. I know the film quality is tough. I will figure out a way to film it lengthwise on my counter where you guys can see better. Because right now the angle of my camera is not great. So I'm gonna start by stretching this out by hand. There's all these little air bubbles in here. You can hear them popping every now and then. So just kind of work the dough, make sure you knead it out. All right. Now we'll get the rolling pin. We're gonna really try to roll the dough out. This is not going to be a perfect circle. That's okay. I'm not a professional pizza maker. You want to make sure that when you're rolling the dough out too, that you're rolling it evenly. You don't want one side of your dough to be really thick and the other side of the dough to be really thin. So if you find that that's happening, just kind of work the dough around the edges and just try to make sure you're getting a nice even crust. Okay. So the dough is all rolled out. It's nice and even. Tried to get it as even as I could. It's not a perfect circle, but it'll still taste good. The oven was preheating to 450. I have my baking pan inside the oven. If you have a pizza stone, that works best. I don't have one, so I just use the baking cookie sheet and I preheat it because I like to get the crust nice and crisp on the bottom. So we're gonna go ahead and take that out and put our pizza dough on, and I'll show you my next step. So the pan is nice and hot. I'm gonna go ahead and get the dough and put it right onto the cookie sheet. Now I might have to reshape this a little bit once I throw it on there. That's okay. It does stretch a little bit as you remove. There we go. You can see I kind of smoothed it back out. Now I'm going to take some olive oil and drizzle some olive oil onto the dough so that it doesn't burn while we're cooking. In there. Now I'm going to bake this for about 5 minutes. All right, timer set. I'll be back. I'm going to clean this up and then I'll show you how I'm going to chop and put on the vegetables. Okay, I'm gonna chop up some of the vegetables that I had in my fridge and just that way we can add on and kind of create our own toppings. So first I'm chopping up some red onion. I had some red onion left over. I had a really nice yellow bell pepper, so I wanna use some of that up. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut up what I had left. I kind of want them real nice and thin. I don't want real thick slices of bell pepper on there. Maybe chop those in half. Okay. Okay, I forgot to do this first, but I like to chop up garlic and put it on the base of my pizza when I put the sauce on. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that because our dough is gonna be ready here in just a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this up. I like to chop it real nice and fine. One trick too, if you don't like chopping garlic, because I know sometimes my hands will stink like garlic for days. Right after I'm finished, I usually rub my hands with a lemon slice, and it seems to really help get the scent of the garlic out. Okay, so the pizza timer is up. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the dough. So I just like, again, I like to pre-bake this a little bit just so that the bottom gets nice and crispy before we apply all of our toppings. So it's coming out, looks really good. I'm gonna let that sit out here for a second. And I wanna chop up the rest of my ingredients. That way we can just go ahead and top everything all at once. Everything will be chopped and ready to go. I also had some leftover pepperoni. I had made a charcuterie board early in the week. So I have leftover mozzarella cheese that's already pre-sliced. I had some pepperoni that I had used. So I'm gonna go ahead and slice some of this up. I like to slice it real thin, then we'll throw it on the pizza as well. What I'm gonna do with some of this extra pepperoni, I'm gonna chop it up real small and add it to the base so that we have just a little bit of extra pepperoni underneath the sauce and the cheese. Then I'm gonna go ahead, I have some prosciutto as well. I don't think I'm gonna use that today. I kind of am feeling more pepperoni vibe. The mozzarella came pre-sliced, as you can see here, so it's already pre-sliced for me in the package. I like my mozzarella to be a little bit thinner, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut each of these slices in half so that we have, you know, a little bit smaller slices. I find it just melts a little easier when it's nice and thin. Oops. There we go. Okay, so we've got some pieces that are just, you know, little cuts, but they're at least a little bit thinner than the whole slice. So those are ready. Okay, so I went ahead and clipped off some basil leaves from my plant outside, washed them real well. Those will be ready to top. I'm gonna go ahead and just slice them into a little bit thinner pieces. Those were some pretty big leaves, but I wanna spread them out on the pizza. So I'm just gonna chop them up just roughly. Give me some smaller leaf petals. There we go. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and top the pizza with our sauce. So I like to use this sauce here. It's for margarita pizza. This brand is delicious. So we're gonna go ahead and get my spoon. I don't like my pizza to have too much sauce on it. It kind of makes the crust a little bit soggy to me. So I just do a few dabs and then I use my spatula to kind of even it out. Let's see how this looks. We're gonna kind of spread it all over here. I like to leave a little bit of the crust. Get it nice and evenly spread. All right, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and take this garlic and throw it onto the sauce. I like to spread it out. It'll taste really nice underneath there. And then all this extra pepperoni that we used here too, I'm gonna go ahead and scoop that up into my hand. We're gonna throw that down there too. Perfect. I have some, I love oregano. It's one of my favorite herbs. So I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle some oregano on the bottom here too. Why not? Okay, let's go ahead and top with our mozzarella. This will melt nice and evenly, so you don't need to put them real close together. It does melt and cover the pizza real nice and evenly, especially these nice thinner slices that we chopped up here. That should be good. Spread them out a little bit. Okay. Now I'm also going to throw on the whole pepperonis. There. Okay, looking good. Now I'm going to throw on some red onion as well. I don't need too much of the red onion. I may have chopped a little too much. A couple more in this corner. And we'll go ahead with the bell peppers. Spread some of those out. Looking good. I always love to throw veggies on my pizza if I can. All right, and last but not least, we're going to top with the basil. I love basil on my pizza. It is just delicious, so the more the merrier for me. But you can add whatever toppings you like. That's the fun part about homemade pizzas, is just you get to create it however you want. I'm also going to add some more oregano. I was gonna do arugula, but I think this is good. I don't need to add extra arugula. Maybe I'll make a salad with that. I'm also gonna go ahead and do some salt and pepper. We're gonna throw this bad boy back in the oven and let it bake for probably about 10 minutes, and I'll check in on it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and set the timer for 10 minutes, and we'll be back to check in. Okay, I cleaned up some of the vegetables that I had laying around. As I was putting the veggies back in the fridge, I realized I had some Parmesan cheese. Shout out to beeswax, by the way, keeping my cheese nice and fresh. I love to use that if I can instead of plastic. It's a great alternative. So I realized I had some Parmesan cheese in there, so I'm gonna grate a little bit. We can top it when we take our pizza out halfway to just check on it. I'll throw a little sprinkle a little bit of Parm on top. So I won't do a lot, just a little bit, just to add some extra flavor. I love Parmesan, it's one of my favorite cheeses. All right, the timer went off, so let's check in on our pizza, see how it's doing. Oh, it's looking good. Pizza's looking good so far. I kind of want the cheese to get a little more brown. I prefer my mozzarella to be nice and bubbly and brown. I like to crisp it up a little bit. So I'm gonna let it bake on here, probably a little bit longer. There we go, we'll just sprinkle a little bit on there. Looks good. I'll probably bake it for another 5 minutes, I'll check in. Okay, pizza timer just went off. Let's go ahead and take the pizza out and see how it looks. Ooh, look how good that looks. Go ahead and slide it up there. Shut the oven. Ooh, look at that brown mozzarella. The cheese is nice and bubbly. Ooh, the crust on this side got a little too burnt, but that's okay. Everything else looks good. Those peppers and onions, the pepperoni. Okay, it's cooled down a little bit. Ooh, look at that. No flop. In the words of David Portnoy, no flop. It's looking good. Let's have a bite and test it out. Delicious. Hope you guys enjoy.